Well, let's talk about what did work, and that is the Rock Hulk Hogan match from WrestleMania 18. If you have not seen this or you haven't seen it in a while, I encourage you to go watch this today. It's outstanding. The work is what it is, but man, the reaction, God, what an electric match. The Rock ends up winning after 2 rock bottoms and the people's elbow. Of course, Hogan comes out to a massive ovation, which we have covered. Toronto loves them some Hogan. Very quickly in the match, the fans are cheering for Hogan, who's supposed to be the heel, and booing The Rock, who's supposed to be the babyface. And at different points during the match, they even bust out the old Rocky sucks and die Rookie die chants, which we haven't had in a long time. Hogan tries to use several different heel tactics, like whipping him with his belt, the eye pokes, the back rakes. Every time he does this, though, the fans cheer. And it almost feels like they do, a double turn, kind of like Austin and Brett did at WrestleMania 13. And The Rock starts to try to play into this a little bit. But what was the backstage reaction when you guys see, that this isn't necessarily going according to plan, but wow, what a response from the crowd. What's the feeling in Gorilla as this is happening?
I wasn't backstage. I watched the entire thing from the floor of the Sky Dome.
What was that like to be in the crowd for that match?
Electrifying, baby. It was. I watched it with Brian Gewirtz, who is the head writer of Raw, and he looked at me and said, "Do they know that The Rock is the babyface and that Hogan is the heel?"
Right.
And I said, "I think they think otherwise." And that crowd was on their feet the entire match. They loved it. I thought both guys did a great job of kind of switching roles. They tried to get them. They tried to get them into that traditional, what they went into the match story. But both guys adapted, and they went with the crowd. Hogan played babyface, and Rock played heel. But it's it's a teaching tool for young talent to go and watch how these two guys listen to the audience. They changed the way the match was laid out and went with it and didn't let the audience get to them. They took the audience on a hell of a ride, and that was the main event of that show.
Oh, for sure. No doubt about it. Was there any consideration given, do you know after the fact if Vince was giving different instructions to the referee?
I don't, because I wasn't there. I was, like I said, I was in the crowd watching it, just sitting there watching it and enjoying it as a fan.
After the match, Hogan is kind of holding his ribs and does the handshake deal with The Rock. And Hulk had said after that he actually broke a rib during his match with Rikishi, but kept it a secret because he didn't want to mess up the WrestleMania match here. Did you hear about that beforehand or after, that he had a broken rib, or is this just Hogan working?
I never heard that.
So they end up attacking Hogan, they being the NWO, and The Rock comes back in, and now Rock and Hogan fight him off. They do the big blow-off at the top of the ramp, where, Hogan and Rock are now friends, and Rock's putting him over. Huge ovation for Hogan here. Was the plan always to have Hogan attacked by Hall and Nash, or was this on the fly because of the reaction that happened during the match?
Conrad, I'm going to give you the honest answer of I don't remember. I really don't remember, because it was so strong that I want to say that wasn't the plan, because we had to send Hogan home to Tampa on the corporate jet the next day to get his red and yellow stuff, because the reaction was so strong with him as a babyface that we did make the change to have him come out in Montreal and cut that promo and do the 17 minutes of not saying a word, standing there and taking in that ovation. So I don't think that was planned. That might have been something they just called a gorilla.
So they call it a gorilla and obviously tell the ref, and then he communicates to the guys what's going to happen. That happens. And then when do you know, hey, we're going to send him home to get the red and yellow?
That night.
So he goes that night, or he goes the next morning?
We went to I want to say we went to Montreal in the morning, and he then took the plane from Montreal to Tampa and then Tampa back.
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
But just
we spent the night in Toronto.
It's not like, there's just a Hulk Hogan accessory store right around the corner. You can go get size 18 yellow boots.
Yeah. And it wasn't, and I don't think that Linda was home, and he had to go home and get it all.
It's amazing. The next night in Montreal, as you alluded to, Hogan comes out to the monstrous ovation, and it goes on for what feels like forever. And you could tell
17 minutes, I believe.
You could tell by Hogan's face, he's truly overwhelmed, and he talks for a few minutes before The Rock comes out to a chorus of boos, and then eventually The Rock does what he does. He turns them, and the crowd starts chanting for Rocky. And then Rock tells Hogan that he'd be honored to give him a rematch anytime, but he was still wearing NWO colors. So Hogan tears the shirt off, and Hall and Nash come out. Nash said that Hogan was the real poison that was killing the NWO, and then The Rock challenged them to a tag match later in the show. So the main event has Hogan and Rock taking on Hall and Nash, and Hogan ends up hitting the leg drop on Hall, but Nash pulls him out of the ring, and they just left, getting counted out. It's been said that because of the reaction that Hogan got this weekend between WrestleMania and the next night on Raw, Vince decides to run with him and make him the undisputed champion, which ended up happening at the next pay-per-view. Was that always the plan, or was this an audible based on WrestleMania?
No, that's not true. The audible to put him in the match took place after the fact, after WrestleMania. But to put the title on him, that didn't come until a little bit later.
So the next SmackDown is March 21st, and Rock beats Nash by DQ. Hall comes to ringside and interferes often, and this brings a big Hogan chant. The Rock ends up hitting the people's elbow, and Scott Hall interferes, causing the DQ. So Hogan comes out and hits the leg drop on Hall, and now X-Pac, wearing an NWO shirt, hits the ring and hits Hogan with a chair. Hogan gets color from the chair shot, and then they spray paint NWO on Hogan. Obviously, Sean Waltman has been friends with Hall and Nash for years, dating back to their first run in the mid-90s in the WWF as part of the clique, so to speak. He was also an NWO member in WCW, but why was he put in the group here? Did you feel like you needed a trio for it to be a gang, or what's the mentality behind adding another member?
Well, you needed a worker, first of all.
Well, there you go.
You need somebody to go out there and take bumps and have matches. So he had familiarity with the group. He was a former member, so it kind of made sense.